Right, today we're going to talk about this very briefly, which is the DJI Action 2, which is a little nifty action camera, which of course its party trick is you can separate it from its dock, and what you have is essentially a session dimension sized camera at about half the depth. And why you would want to use this against this or one of the other heroes. And I'm going to let the footage speak for itself. That I'll come on to that a little bit later, but I'm just going to explain why I bought it and get rid of a few of the bullshit things that are going around on YouTube at the moment and my thoughts on it so far. So first things first, you can download your SD card footage with very little effort. That was fixed on day one. So if you basically just go into settings, you can see here, you can choose between SD card in here, there isn't one in at the moment, and internal storage. And you'll see here, export to SD card. So once you've filled up the 23 gig or so of space that you've got in the little top bit, you can just connect it to this base, click transfer, and your footage will go straight into there. Obviously it takes a few minutes to do, but not a huge effort when you've been flying for a few packs or whatever. Overheating is a complete non-issue for FPV pilots. After flying with this guy and putting 4 or 5 packs through it, it's not even warm. I sat it on my desk today and recorded 4K 30, and it overheated after about 11 minutes of recording. And obviously because this is a UK version, we can't change the setting, if I can even remember where it is, which allows it to run hotter. But 4K 30 for 11 minutes, sat on my desk in my office at 21 degrees, is not going to cause us any issue on a quadcopter. So again, completely worthless. If you're planning to use this guy for flying, you don't need to worry about the overheating. And if it can record for 11 minutes 4K 30 sat doing nothing without its dock, which increases that length of time and pretty much doubles the amount of time that you can record before it overheats, I don't really imagine you're going to have too many issues regardless of what you do with it, unless you live in very hot climates. And you've got to think, when people are talking about overheating, we're flying quads with Cadex Vistas which overheat in a couple of minutes sat on your bench, and they don't overheat in the air. And it's going to be the same thing with this guy. It's an aluminium case, not a problem. So why did I buy that little guy when I've got a Hero 9 here, I've got a stripped Hero 8, I've had Hero 7, I've got a Session? Why did I get this little guy? And the answer why I got it is because I just fancied trying something new. Obviously GoPro released the new Hero 10. Frankly, I'm sick of buying a new GoPro every year, which is essentially exactly the same as the previous GoPro, but a bit heavier with marginally slightly better video quality, which we won't really see exporting to YouTube with amateur shots. And the GoPro is a great camera, but it's super heavy. And if you can drop off 105 grams straight away off your quadcopter by strapping this guy to it, then A, you've probably got a better flying quadcopter, and B, you've improved your flight time. And that applies to whether you're flying a 5-inch or a 3-inch or whatever. It just opens up a lot more opportunities. Now, because this is me, as you can see, I've already smashed it. As you can see from this footage, I hit a metal fence straight on at about, I don't know, 35, 40 miles an hour maybe. Smashed my ND filter. You can see where it hit the the case here, and you can see that the lens survived and its outer casing has just got some scratches on it. So the Gorilla Glass held up. Is it going to be as hard as this guy? No, of course not. But the reason why GoPros are so sturdy, forgetting about the lens, is because they have this rubberized protective sort of casing on it. And if you've ever stripped one of these down to make a naked hero, you'll know that this is about sort of 4 or 5 mil thick. You could essentially just buy a silicone case from Amazon. No doubt they'll be released in a month or so, and I get exactly the same body protection on this. The issue is, of course, the lens, and if you bust the lens, you're a bit knackered. Whereas on the Hero 9 and 10, you can of course replace it. And in itself, it's not great, but we're talking about a tiny little action cam here. If it had a removable lens, then of course it would be much heavier. One of the reasons why I got this is because you can buy DJI Refresh in the UK for 22 quid, and they'll replace or fix this little guy for 17 quid on the first time, and I think 23 quid the next time round, which in the UK is miles better than GoPro offer. And of course in the UK we don't get, you know, free replacements like you can get in the US with Best Buy, etc. So I'm not too worried if I smash this front screen. I've paid my 22 quid and it's going to cost me 17 quid to get a new one. In terms of mounts, because this guy has got a huge angle of 155 degrees, it damn near looks behind itself. You've got to be really careful about how you mount it. This is a case that Bloods has designed, and I've been flying mine on this particular quad, and essentially all that happens is the ND filter will sit behind in the enclosure, and I'm using ND filters regardless of weather, because of course nobody's released protective lens protectors, etc. for the camera. So as I said, I've been flying mine on this prototype frame that Mark Stevens made me, and my initial thoughts are it's pretty good. As I said, I'll let the footage speak for itself. If you run it on its widest angle, you get fisheye and sort of almost motion blur in one sort of area or to each side, and I'm not sure whether it's better to run it in its widest angle or the next one down, or whether that can be corrected in post at this stage. But the footage itself, 4K 30 frames per second, is really good. Is it as good as this guy? You know, probably not, but I'm not sort of looking at it frame by frame. I'm looking at me flying a quadcopter at, you know, 40-60 miles an hour, whatever it's doing. But it's good enough, and it's better by a long margin than a Session, which is its only real competitor. And of course you can't buy those anyway. So as I said, I'll leave the footage for you to decide how you like it. I find it records darker than the equivalent Hero. Running a Hero 9 or something like that with an ND8 filter, you would probably set your ISO to a max of maybe 200. If you're running frame rate of 30 frames per second, you would set your shutter speed to 160. Obviously if you're filming at 60 frames per second, 120. This guy, you tend to run it tends to run darker, so when I used an ND8 filter and set the ISO to a max of 200, it was really dark. So I've changed from ND8 to an ND4 filter, and these are the cheapy TBS ones, which Bloods' mount fits, and that sort of seems to have solved that darkening issue. Colour reproduction I find much better than GoPro. It seems more saturated, more lively, even on flat British weather like we've got at the moment, where it's cloudy all the time. It seems to bring out more colour, and you don't end up with that sort of sludgy, muddy tones that GoPro can give you. Now of course on GoPro we would tend to film on a flat profile, which would give us the widest dynamic range and then color correct in post. Haven't bothered doing that with this guy yet for two reasons. One, I'm just sort of testing its settings, and two, its version of sort of flat color profile is D-Cine, and from my initial tests it seems too dark for me, but I'm guessing that's going to be something that DJI will probably fix pretty quickly. So I've just been using mine, as I said, on normal settings. I've set my ISO to look. Yeah, ISO I've set to 100 to 400, frame rate, or should I say shutter speed 1/60th, and it tends to sort of do really well at those sort of settings, and you don't get too much sort of breakup even going to 400 ISO. Of course you can stick it on auto and do all that jazz as well, but the whole thing is just really easy to use. I've left white balance on auto because it seems really good at capturing the colours, and obviously you can mess around with your field of view, etc., to your heart's content. The only thing that doesn't work particularly well, or at least in my case, is the app, which you have to download from DJI if you're running Android, because it's not on the App Store. On my Galaxy S21, which is what I'm filming with, the live preview video feed doesn't come through. I just get sort of pixelated blocks, and I think that's because the app doesn't support the Galaxy S21. Bloods at Halo RC, who's also got one of these, isn't having that problem, so I'm guessing it's basically a camera, or should I say it's a phone that's not supported for whatever reason, albeit it's a very popular one. But as that live sort of view duplicating what the camera sees is not a feature that I've ever really used, even on GoPro. It's not something that I'm too bothered about. It's really easy to change all the settings via the app. The only other thing I would say is that the range of it, or the range of the connection, seems really limited. You kind of have to hold your phone almost next to the camera to change the settings, especially when it's in a 2PU case. It seems to make it really worse. So again, take that for what it is. So yeah, I'll leave you with the flight footage. Make of it what you will, buy it or not, as the case may be. In terms of how I'm going to use it and why I don't think the battery life will be an issue, is because this guy will happily film multiple packs, and in my head, if I'm on sort of heavy days flying and I'm going to be running 20 packs or something like that, longer than this guy can actually film for, all I'm going to do is snap it to its little battery pack between packs as I'm changing it or having a drink or whatever I'm doing, and it will just top up the little action camera. So I don't think I'm going to really run into too many issues battery wise. And of course this is the one that has the screen on it. You don't need the screen at all for FPV. The only reason I got it is A, because it was the only way to get the camera when it was initially released, and B, because I thought it'd be quite handy for making these videos, because of course I can basically see what I'm filming. But other than that, the only real reason to get this bit is it has 3 extra microphones, which brings me on actually to sound quality. In the footage that you see, I was running busted up props. Couple of them were the new Axis Blackbird props, and HQ V2Ss as well, and the sound, to me at least, is way better than the Hero. I've hated the Hero sound all the way back to 6, 7, 8, 9. It's all been pretty unusable to me. The Session had way better sound quality in regards to flying, and the sound on this little guy seems much better, even with jaggy props and a not a particularly sweet sounding quadcopter. Because of that, it's really usable, so I'm pretty impressed with that. And obviously this battery pack, as I said, with its screen has an extra 3 microphones, so it should be pretty good for making videos and doing stuff like I like to do. And of course you can get a macro lens to fit on it as well, which would be good for close-ups. So yeah, that's it from me. I'm pretty impressed with it. The only thing I feel that they need to work on is to slightly brighten the image on the flat color profile, which is a bit of an issue, and I need to sort of work out the best settings and whether it's worthwhile running its widest possible angle and getting this crazy sort of fisheye or warping, or whether I can basically fix that in post. Cheers guys, thanks, bye bye.